Hello everyone. Today let's continue with the story of the single mother, Diệu Hân. After waking up from a long coma, Han seemed to have turned into a completely different person. The once warm, clear eyes now carried only a dazed, distant look. She glanced around the hospital bed as if everything was a strange room she had never seen before. Faces that should have been familiar and comforting looked to her like lifeless masks, stirring not a single memory. Even Dan, the one who had stayed awake by her side, waiting day after day for this moment, was met only with wary, unfamiliar eyes, as if he were just a passerby. When Dan hurried to the parking lot, his only thought was to bring Han safely home. But as he drove to the hospital gate, his heart nearly stopped. The bed was empty, the hallway silent. Han had vanished from his sight without a trace. Panic surged through him, breath-shallow eyes darting. Instinctively, he cried out, his voice hoarse. Hun, where are you? Don't run away like this. Only the wind rustling through the roadside trees answered him, stretching his fear endlessly. Without hesitation, Dan rushed into the small road outside the hospital. The dim streetlights cast long shadows, making the path desolate and endless. He ran while calling her name, his footsteps echoing, merging with his ragged breathing. Every corner, every narrow turn forced his eyes to strain, hoping to glimpse her silhouette. Even just a familiar shirt, a lost step. But all that met him was emptiness. Horrifying thoughts flickered in his mind. Was Han desperately trying to find her old home? The very hell she once escaped from? Or was she wandering the streets, lost, not knowing who she was or where to go? Dan's strides grew faster, his trembling hand clutching his phone, praying for a call to confirm she was safe. But the screen remained dark, and only his desperate voice broke the night, weighed down with fear. Inside Han's mind, every happy memory had vanished, erased as if they never existed. Only fragments of the past remained, scarred and jagged like old wounds. Angry shouts, violent eyes, heavy blows that rained down without mercy. She shuddered when she heard a door creak open, the sound of male footsteps making her whole body tense. Her heart pounded, throat tightening, bracing for the violence she believed was coming. In a broken whisper, as if speaking only to herself, she murmured, "I must go home. Cook dinner for my husband, if not, he will be angry." Those words fell into the room like a heavy silence. Everyone froze, realizing she had lost everything. Forgotten the days of being loved, forgotten the hands that had saved her from her old hell. Now, only the darkness of the past consumed her, swallowing every light of hope. Dan looked at Han, his heart twisting in pain. The woman he once protected, the one he gave hope to, was now trapped in a maze of painful memories. He longed to hold her, to tell her the past was over, that she no longer needed to fear. But he knew his words would be nothing more than a lost breeze, unable to reach her shattered heart. With determination in his eyes, Dan knew the road ahead would be harsh. To bring Han back to the present, to help her see the love and happiness waiting for her, he would need endless patience, soothing her bit by bit, reigniting her hope little by little. Yet deep down he also knew, if there was even the smallest opening, her abusive husband, the man who scarred her soul, could exploit her memory loss to drag her back into the same hell. Dan clenched his fists and vowed, "No matter how hard it gets, I must keep Han here, so she can live a new life, one that truly belongs to her." The more Dan ran, the tighter his chest felt. Each desperate call of Han echoed through the night, only to be swallowed by a terrifying silence. The narrow road outside the hospital stretched endlessly, and her figure had vanished as if she had never been there. Breathless, he stopped, scanning frantically in every direction, only to find nothing. Sweat drenched his forehead, his heart squeezed as if gripped by an iron fist. With trembling hands, Dan pulled out his phone. His fingers flew over the keypad, dialing Tana's number. The few seconds of ringing felt like an eternity. The moment the call connected, Dan's voice broke with panic. "Ton. Han is gone." I drove to the gate and she was nowhere to be seen. I ran along the whole road but nothing. I don't know where she went. I'm so scared. On the other end, silence lingered for a beat before Tana's heavy, ragged breathing broke through, laden with fear. His voice came sharp, trembling. "How can that be? She just woke up. Dan, you must find her. Don't let Han be out there alone. She's still weak and she remembers nothing. It's dangerous." Dan gripped the phone tighter, his eyes reddening. "I know, but it seems she's forgotten everything, even little Tom. All that's left in her mind are the unhappy memories of her ex-husband. I'm afraid she'll try to find her way back to that house." On the other end, Tom fell silent, stunned. Images of Han with baby Tom flooded his mind, wrenching his heart. He tried to steady himself, but his voice still shook. "Dan, stay in touch. I'm coming back immediately. Whatever happens, she mustn't fall into his hands again." Dan nodded, his eyes burning with both determination and fear. Deep inside, he knew this night could be a turning point. Either they would save Han, or lose her forever. Meanwhile, Han stumbled barefoot along the rugged dirt road leading to her old neighborhood. At some point, her hospital slippers had slipped off, leaving her feet raw against gravel and stone. Her pale face, hollow eyes, and frail figure stretched long beneath the dim yellow streetlight, like a wandering shadow drifting through the midnight silence. In her mind, one fragmented voice played over and over. Go home, if not, he will be angry." Each step dragged her closer to the very place she once begged to escape. Now, cruelly, it was the only destination left in her twisted memory. At the end of the shabby alley, the small house with its weathered wooden door emerged. Her heart pounded, not with joy but with instinctive dread. Her thin hand trembled against the rusted gate, breath quickening. In a flash, broken images returned like a cruel film reel. The sting of lashes cracking in the air, furious screams, the muffled sobs of a woman cornered. Elsewhere across the city, Ton was nearly losing his mind. Dan's words echoed in his head as he drove like a madman, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles bled. His eyes burned red, his face tense with desperation. The worst visions played before him. Han alone at that house, confronting her darkest past, perhaps even falling back into the hands of the man who once tormented her. Grinding his teeth, he swore to himself, "No, I won't let that happen. No matter what, I'll bring you back." Dan, meanwhile, was still combing through the narrow streets near the hospital. He ran breathlessly, stopping to ask passers-by, eyes darting everywhere, terrified of missing even the smallest trace. But deep inside, his instincts grew stronger. Han was heading toward the old house. And if that was true, every second that passed carried her closer to the abyss. At the end of the alley, Han stood before the rusted gate. Tears streamed down her face, though she didn't even know why she was crying. In her empty mind there was no Tom, no Dan, no Ton. Everything was veiled by an invisible chain, dragging her back into the shadows of the past. As the rickety door rattled faintly in the night wind, Han let out a shallow breath, her trembling hand pressing against it, as if about to push it open. The news of Han's disappearance threw the entire hospital into chaos. Dan ran frantically while calling Ton, his voice breaking with worry. Ton, upon hearing, immediately turned his car around, his heart burning with panic. At once, many of Han's acquaintances were alerted, scattering across the streets in every direction, all desperate to find her quickly. But in the dense night and tangled alleys, no one knew where Han had gone. More frightening still, no one even knew exactly where her old house was. That part of her past was something she had always kept hidden, never revealing in detail to anyone. Even Ton, the one closest to her, had only heard vague mentions but never a specific address. Standing at a crossroads, Dan was drenched in sweat. He turned to the search group, his voice pleading, "Does anyone know where Han's old house is? She She might be heading back there. Everyone shook their heads, their eyes filled with helplessness. They knew Han had endured a painful past, but that house was like a scar she had always avoided, never sharing clearly. Meanwhile, Tan gripped the steering wheel so tightly his lips bled from biting them. He cursed himself for never asking, never preparing for the worst. Now, somewhere in the night, Han's frail figure drifted. Lost, amnesiac, with no memory of Tom, no recollection of anyone except the haunting shadows of her past. Both Dan and Tan felt like empty shells, each passing second pressing heavier on their hearts. Their only hope was that someone, anyone, might catch sight of her before it was too late. Han wandered aimlessly, her bare feet pressing against the freezing pavement. Each step was mechanical, without purpose or direction, driven only by an invisible force pulling her forward. The darkness was thick, street lamps spilling pale patches of yellow light that stretched her shadow thin before swallowing it whole. Along the road, houses were shut tight, the silence broken only by distant barking dogs and the shrill hum of insects, adding to the eerie stillness. Inside her mind, memories twisted into a tangled mess. At times she was back in the shabby kitchen, the fire dim, pots and pans clattering loudly. At times she heard the violent shouts of her abusive husband, mingled with her own sobs in the dead of night. She could almost feel his heavy hand yanking her hair, squeezing her arm with brutal force. Her chest heaved, her lips cracked, whispering the same lifeless words again and again. Go home. Must go home. He'll be angry if there's no dinner. At every turn she chose instinctively, eyes vacant, steps unsteady, with no idea where she was. In her fractured mind there was no image of Tom, the child who once tethered her to life, her only light. Tan had vanished from her memory. Dan nothing more than a distant name. Han's world was now nothing but a hollow darkness, echoing with voices of the past. Behind her, Dan, Tan, and others still searched frantically. They split up along streets and alleys, shouting her name, asking the few passers-by who remained. But each inquiry met only with a shake of the head. No one had seen a frail woman in a hospital gown, staggering in the night. Their fear grew heavier, pressing down like a suffocating wave. As the night deepened, cold mist spread, blurring the already dim streetlights. The city seemed to transform into a maze, darkness sealing off every path. And within that maze, Han kept walking silently, her thin shoulders trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks though she didn't know why she wept. Her figure grew smaller, fading into the fog, adrift like a wandering soul, with no one knowing where she would finally stop. Han's figure drifted farther and farther away from the city lights. The asphalt road gave way to a rough dirt path, lined with shadowy trees whispering in the night wind. In the distance, the scattered lights of houses slowly disappeared, leaving only the chill of the wind and the hum of insects. She walked like a sleepwalker, unaware of when she had left the crowded streets behind. She did not know where she was going, only that her feet kept moving, guided by the distorted fragments of memory. In her mind, the vague idea of home became a dark lighthouse, pulling her deeper into the unknown. Her hoarse voice murmured as if to herself, "The house, it's here. I have to go home, he'll be waiting." Behind her, Tan, Dan, and others who knew her still searched desperately, scouring every street and alley near the hospital and neighborhood. They called her name, asked passers-by, even stopped by the few late-night shops still open. But it was useless. No one had seen a frail woman in a hospital gown, lost in the mist. Dan panted heavily, his shoulders weighed down with worry. He looked at Tan, his face taut, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights and fear, and his heart twisted painfully. Both men understood. If Han kept walking like this, leaving the neighborhoods behind for the desolate outskirts, finding her would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Meanwhile, Han trudged onward, her bare feet caked with dirt. The further she went, the more desolate the surroundings became. Empty lots shrouded in mist, abandoned houses with rusting gates sealed shut. A dog barked in the distance, then fell silent again. Her small, fragile figure wandered the lonely outskirts, like a drifting soul swallowed by darkness. Neither Ton nor Dan realized that Han was slipping farther from them with each passing second. While they searched in the busy streets, she was already vanishing into the endless void of the outskirts, where no one knew she was there. On and on she went, her shadow sinking deeper into the wasteland. The night grew colder, mist thickened, and gusts of wind made her shiver. Her bare feet, cut and scratched, no longer registered the pain. In her mind, only a broken voice from the past echoed. "Hurry home or else, you'll be punished." The dirt path led to an abandoned factory, its moss-covered walls and rusted gates groaning in the wind. The silence was chilling. Han paused, her vacant eyes fixing on the half-open gate. Without hesitation, she stepped inside. Suddenly, a sound shattered the stillness, glass breaking, then the dragging scrape of footsteps. From the shadows of the derelict factory, figures emerged. A group of wandering youths with hollow faces, bloodshot eyes, and the stench of alcohol. They spotted her and burst into eerie laughter, slurring, "Hey, look at that! Someone wandering in this late at night. She's in a hospital gown, must have escaped, haha." Startled, Han staggered backward. In her panic, the strangers' faces blurred with the memories of her abusive husband. Her body shook violently, breath ragged, unsure of where she was, only knowing fear had her in its grip. The young men sneered, stepping closer, closing in around her. In the desolate outskirts where no soul passed by, Han now faced real danger. She trembled, words tumbling from her cracked lips. Don't hit me. I'll cook dinner right now. Please don't be angry." Her delirious plea only made the men laugh harder. They closed in another step, and the night itself seemed to grow more terrifying than ever. Inside the cold, abandoned factory, Han's faint cries for help pierced the night like blades. Her trembling hands clutched her chest as she leaned helplessly against a moss-covered wall, wide eyes filled with terror. Her voice came out broken, choked with sobs. "Help me, don't hit me. Please help me." But her pleas were met only with drunken laughter, thick with the stench of alcohol and cigarettes. The gang of youths treated her fear as a cheap amusement. They moved closer step by step, their mocking voices mingling with the chilling scrape of shoes dragging across the stained concrete. "Ha! Look at her, shaking like a leaf," one sneered, his eyes crawling over Han's frail figure. "No one's gonna hear you out here. Scream louder, let's see if anyone dares to save you." Another jeered, reaching to yank her thin arm. Han recoiled, stumbling to the damp floor. Her knees scraped against gravel, bleeding, but the pain was nothing compared to the terror flooding her veins. Tears streamed down her pale face as she stammered over and over, "Don't, please don't. I'll do it. I'll cook dinner, don't be angry." Her delirious words only fueled their laughter, echoing with the crunch of broken glass beneath their feet, reverberating through the vast emptiness like ghostly echoes. A few of them now showed clear malice in their eyes. One licked his lips, crouching closer with a twisted smile. "Looks like we got lucky tonight, boys. No one's coming for her. She'll be easy prey." The group laughed in unison, tightening their circle. Their looming shadows engulfed Han's trembling form. She curled up, hands over her head, her pitiful cries fading into the suffocating night. The air grew heavy, the musty stench of the factory mixing with their foul breath, pressing down on her like a weight she could not escape. Her mind spun, laughter, shadowy figures, violent memories of the past blurring together. For a moment she felt she had fallen straight back into hell, with no way out. Then a sharp voice rang out across the factory, cutting through the chaos. The gang froze briefly, though a few tried to mask their unease with sneers. A tattooed thug stepped forward, slurring, "Police my ass. Old man, you trying to play hero?" He jerked his head, and two others advanced to intimidate. But the middle-aged man who had appeared stood firm, gripping an iron rod. His eyes burned with resolve as he growled, "I'll say it again, let her go. Or face me." Han still shuddered, sobbing in broken whispers. "Don't hit me, please don't." The sound tightened the stranger's chest. He no longer saw this as someone else's problem, but as his responsibility to protect an innocent life. One thug lunged forward, but with a sharp clang. The man slammed the rod against the ground near his feet. Sparks flew, the steel screech ringing through the factory. The gang faltered. "One more step and I won't hold back," he barked, fire in his eyes. The tension thickened. Even drunk, some of them began to realize this wasn't an easy fight. If the man truly had called the police, their time was short. Han sat crumpled on the floor, tears streaking her face, arms wrapped tight around herself. For the first time amidst her despair, a faint spark of hope flickered. This stranger had become the only shield between her and the darkness. Outside, the night was silent, cloaked in heavy fog. Inside, the air burned with imminent violence. The man's grip on the rod tightened, breath heavy but gaze unshaken. He knew if he faltered even for a second, she would be lost to these heartless men. The tattooed thug snarled, swinging a fist. In a blur, the rod lashed out, striking his arm and sending him stumbling back with curses. Others rushed in, but the man swept the rod in a fierce arc, the clang echoing like a warning bell. "Any closer and I'll break you," he thundered. One tried to flank him, but a swift strike knocked him sprawling. The rest exchanged uneasy glances. Their easy prey was suddenly guarded by a storm they hadn't expected. Meanwhile, Han pressed her face to the wall, shoulders trembling, whispering in desperation, "Help! Please help me!" Her plea ignited the man's resolve. He struck hard, forcing the gang to retreat a step, then spun around to her. "Run! Get out now, girl! Go!" But Han was too shattered to move, tears blinding her. Realizing she couldn't save herself, he lunged, pulling her up firmly. "Come! Stay with me," he ordered. Behind them, the thugs howled with fury, preparing to charge again. The abandoned factory had become a battlefield of life and death. A frail woman needing rescue, a pack of predators closing in, and one lone man standing against them all.
Hello mọi người, rất vui được gặp lại mọi người trong video của mình nha. Chúc mọi người có một ngày mới vui vẻ và hạnh phúc, có một ngày làm việc tràn đầy năng lượng. Cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video của mình. Hy vọng rằng những video của mình sẽ mang đến cho mọi người một trải nghiệm mới về những câu chuyện của người mẹ đơn thân sinh sống ở Việt Nam. Hiện tại thì những video của mình thường được phát hành vào lúc 7 giờ tại khung giờ Việt Nam. Mọi người nhớ chú ý đón xem nha. Và nếu cảm thấy những video của mình hay, hấp dẫn thì hy vọng mọi người sẽ ủng hộ kênh của mình để kênh của mình ngày càng phát triển và mình sẽ làm nhiều video hay và hấp dẫn hơn cho mọi người xem. Và nhớ để lại cho mình một nhận xét ở dưới phần bình luận ở mỗi video để những video sau mình sẽ cải thiện càng ngày càng hay hơn. Cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video của mình. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại mọi người nha.